Hey friends, and welcome back for a very overdue update for the Legacy of Phrecia starter that I made, which is a Phantasm and Spider build. And so far, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. It did what I needed it to as far as starters go, but I think this is where I'm going to leave it and make a new character. So for a quick overview of how the build is working, we went Servant of the arakalis in order to get our level 20 raised spiders. We wanted to combine raised spiders with the soul rest staff for a super cozy minion build that automatically summons phantasms, and those phantasms can then trigger our spiders. Overall, that works pretty well. We've changed up the build a little bit. We're no longer going malevolent strands or neurotoxins. Instead, we went thread spinner with silk dancer, as that feels like a much better investment of 4 points. So now that we've covered that, we're using basic minion stuff. We have added in corpse walkers to automate a lot of how the build is working, and we've also added in Disciple of Katava. So the reason we have these is the soul rest staff triggers level 20 summon phantasms when you consume a corpse. Disciple of Katava makes you consume a corpse every second, as long as one is nearby. And then we also have this recovery mastery that says every 3 seconds consume a nearby corpse. So as long as we have corpses around, we are consuming them at a steady rate, and that is enough to, if none of them die, keep us at capped phantasms. We also have our Chaos Golem, which is mostly there to give us just a little bit of defense and in order to trigger Feeding Frenzy. And then last, we made a change to add in Val Summon Skeletons. And this is just a single target damage boost. We don't lose a ton of damage from our phantasms by replacing one of the supports with Summon Skeletons, but we do gain a pretty significant amount of burst-ish single target damage, which is really nice. And I think that about covers the changes. There's still a lot that can be done with this build as far as min-maxing it. For instance, going for a Darkness Enthroned and the Ghastly Eye Jewel unique gem that increases damage over time multi for your minions are very obvious, easy access damage increases. But overall, again, I just kind of want to move on and try out a different build. So how did this build work? Well, the build achieved all of the goals we had for it, because the goal was for this build to get all of our watchstones and get us through the beginning of the game and get us into farming for our next build. And so it did everything we wanted it to. It doesn't farm as well as I want it to because it doesn't clear fast enough, but it clears T16s, no problem. It clears all the bosses, no problem. And for some bosses, it performs much better than others. Really, any boss that has no phase mechanics, it does very well, because you can kind of pre-summon and ready your minions, and then they can just burst the boss down. So things like the Elder fight go pretty well, whereas Maven takes a very long time. And I think last thing of note is I kind of just want to get into a map and display kind of why I'm moving out of this build very quickly, or why I want to move out of this build. And it's because while it does fine, it's super cozy, I don't have to press any buttons, it's just not fast enough. Once they get the damage ramped, they do all right, but it takes a little while. And so that's really the motivation behind this. The build is plenty tanky, the build does fine on bosses. I don't anticipate this doing well at all in T17s, and that has to do with two things. Number one, I don't think this build is tanky enough on its own for T17s, given how long it takes for these minions to clear packs. And so that, I think, is the downfall. Another issue is that phantasms, as we have it configured, are really squishy. You can see we're down to 6 phantasms, even though we're constantly summoning them. Again, we can fix this by just throwing down an Arcanist brand, and then they're much better uptime. And that's kind of the whole thing with phantasms, is if they die, no big deal, just summon more. But in boss fights, often your spiders just aren't up, and that has to do more with how spiders are summoned than anything else, and I haven't bothered implementing the fixes that normal spiders builds make. Like normal arakali dagger builds have ways to work around that so that their boss fighting is not awful. And I just haven't done that. Overall, I think this build has more potential that it can bring out. But again, I really just want to move on to a Herald of Thunder build. I do think that there is a pretty significant chance that one of the best ways to go about this might just be to make a normal arakali spiders build and just drop the level 20 spiders. So use arakali's fang and a squire and just use the really good minion buffs as a way to make a normal spiders build better. But yeah, I think that about covers it for the update. Again, I'm pretty happy with what the build did, as again the expectation was for the build to get us through the beginning of the game and into our end game, and it did that. It was never the intention that this would go to T17s or that I would invest enough into it for it to even have a realistic expectation of doing that. And I honestly am not wild about how spiders came out. Like, they feel incredible during the campaign and they're nice, but I don't think they compare well to level 1 spiders, which is why I think that a better way to go with a spider build on Servant of the Arakali might just be Arakali's Fang, and then just use the other mods in the Ascendancy. Another alternative is to actually just make an attack-based poison build and use the spiders for their buff only. So let's switch over to PoB and take a deep dive into what the build looks like now. So here we have the Phantasms, and with Phantasms and Spiders all up and post ramp, it is right around 2.5 million DPS. This is assuming that there are at least 20 poisons on the enemy. All of them have 100% chance to poison. That should be easy. And 15 wither stacks. All of them have a 10% chance to wither, which is low, but they're all attacking 1 to 2 times per second. So 40 attacks per second for 4-second wither shouldn't be, this shouldn't be extreme in any stretch of the imagination. 4 spider web stacks, just stay near the enemy, and I think that's it. Oh, ignited. So I don't know that this is worth it, but it's something I wanted to try out. This node here, Raise and Pillage, minions have a 20% chance to ignite, and they gain physical damage as extra fire, and they gain increased damage with hits and ailments against ignited enemies. So with this, there's no reason that anything shouldn't be ignited after a couple hits. I don't know that this is worth it. It's just something I saw and I was just like, yeah, I'll try it. I think it's it. Feeding Frenzy I have off, and that is because it requires our golem to go hit something, which is okay uptime as long as you are keeping your golem up, but your golem will die. So if you keep your golem up, great. If you do not, then you're losing out on that damage. And I think that's it. So going into the items, we have Soul Rest, Ancient Skull, and Corpse Walker as our uniques. Ancient Skull is a nice little source of damage. We can use something else, but this is a nice way to get a damage boost for the spiders, which we cannot support with anything. Soul Rest is the way that we're getting our Phantasms, which is the majority of our clear and about half of our damage. And then we have Writhing Jar, just to help us pick up our spiders whenever we can. We're using, where is it at? Divine Ire as the skill that we use to summon our spiders. And the way that looks is you just channel Divine Ire and it makes the circle around you, so anything in this circle is taking periodic damage. So put a bunch of corpses on the ground, channel the skill, and then hit our Writhing Flask, and we get a bunch of spiders. For our Ghastly Eye Jewels, we have enough chance to poison for our minions on all of our Ghastly Eye Jewels to not need a chance to poison on our Phantasms. So they have 100% chance to poison without needing a chance to poison support, which means that we can do other things with that, like, let's see, where's it at? Vile Toxins is what we're currently using. So rather than having chance to poison, we get to use Vile Toxins, which is where the configuration of 20 stacks comes from. And you can see that the damage that this makes a difference in is okay. It's not incredible, but 70-ish. And then finally, I think if I were to take this build further, I would probably just invest into spiders and very possibly just go arakalis fang. So we would go arakalis fang, drop Brood Guard, and just go neurotoxin or Weaver's Contrition. Although I really hate using an ascendancy point for the Phantasm mark. But I think neurotoxin is probably the way I would go with this. And that way we could support our spiders with things like Multistrike and Melee Splash. I think that does it for the build update. I had a lot of fun with this one, but I'm happy to be moving on. The next build I'm going to be working on is going to be something around a Surfcaster Herald of Thunder build. Probably just going to start by doing Ghost to the Deep, and then go into Stormy Seas to convert all of our lightning damage to cold damage and allow our cold damage to shock, which is going to convert Herald of Thunder as well, which is huge. And then we probably go Cold and Lightning Res Crit Strike Evasion rating for the time being. And I say for the time being because eventually we are going to go Fishing Rod, because Bated Breath is a huge source of damage for Herald of Thunder, because Herald of Thunder is traditionally very hard to get to critically strike, or it takes a lot of investment. With this, it means that we can, with very, very little investment, get all critical strikes on Herald of Thunder, which means we can go into Crit Strike Multi and focus on our crits and our damage that are coming from crits, as well as with the conversion to cold, maybe pair Herald of Thunder with Herald of Ice in order to solve our clear issues that Herald of Thunder always has. But yeah, that's the plan going forward for the next build. I'm very excited about that, and we'll be starting that tonight. So if you want to follow along with the new Herald of Thunder build, be sure to get subscribed, be sure to check out the Twitch channel, and if you like this build or have any other ideas for how to improve this build, throw it in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.